the double doors of the horizon. Unlocked are its bolts. Clouds darken the sky. The stars rain down. The constellations stagger. The bones of the hellhounds tremble. The porters are silent when they see this king dawning as a soul. Open are the double doors of the horizon. Unlocked are its bolts. Men fall. Their name is not. Seize thou this king by his arm. Take this king to the sky, that he not die on earth among men. Open are the double doors of the horizon. Unlocked are its bolts. He flies who flies. This king flies away from you, ye mortal. He is not of the earth. He is of the sky. He flaps his wings like a zerret bird. He goes to the sky. Goes to the sky on the wind, on the wind.
Yo, we back in this bit for another one. Good Lord. Go Deep episode 227. This is gonna be a great fucking show. because it's finally all starting to come together and you can finally start to see it like visible, the regular person, not just the conspiracy theorists. It's that time, guys. It's joyous events about to happen. So if you saw the title, you already see Ghislaine Maxwell finally in court. But that's gonna tie into so much other shit, guys, that, you know, if you've been keeping up with Go Deep, you've probably seen it. You know, if you've been keeping up with Zack Snyder and Christopher Nolan, you've seen it, and you probably just didn't know it, but it's coming all together right now. If you've been living in this fucking world during the presidency of Donald Trump, and, you know, from Barack Obama on to Donald Trump, and now to Joe Biden, you've seen it. You just didn't know what it was. But Go Deep, if you've been following it, I've been telling you what it is. I have laid it out who it is. You probably still haven't really understood. And I probably still haven't, you know, there's still some ways to go. And we're just going to keep going on that road. But today is a checkpoint where we can save the game and, you know, clap it up with our homeboys, dap each other up by the water cooler at work. But before we do that, we should get some, we should put some more music in so we can get amped, get our brain nice, ready for a nice podcast. Go Deep 227. 227, we sending these hoes to heaven. Ghislaine Maxwell is in court today. Well, she was in court yesterday. I didn't get to do a podcast because I was out of town. Go bitch. Go deep. Yeah, bitch.
Huh? Hey, yo, it's Perb, Donnie.
If you're not gonna take care of business, stop taking up space.
ACT.
If you're not gonna take care of
Chip Bang.
business,
Rakim
stop taking
Allah.
up space.
Come on. Projects. Projects. Slum. Bombs. Ghetto. Large sums. Yo, we read it all in the Fed magazine. Hookers, pushers, lead magazines. I grew up in Queens, around Pappy and Preem. Had my own dreams, copper, caddy and lean. And Drac told me about the feds and rats. And after that talk, all he said was that I'ma keep pushing the trigger till your head is back. Get rich off my songs, the hell with crack. And Jamel ran through every jail with rap, trying to put my voice on every reelin' track. And I don't give a fuck if the real is whack. I bring a old school MC feeling back. And we still in the hood with gas. And my goons ain't good with gas. And where you think you going with the wooden plaques? See, it ain't just me, the whole fool was back. But you don't know what to do with tracks. And what can this industry do with trash? And what the fuck you gonna do for rap? I'ma do it for the kids, get a school some cash. Fuck a chain, I'ma jewel they ass. Like, why play if the game don't last?
If you're not gonna take care of business, stop taking up space. If you're not gonna take care of business, stop taking up space. If you're not gonna take care of business, stop taking up space. If you're not gonna take care of business, stop taking up space.
My social society's blinded by money getters. players and pimps, your hoe chose me. Supposedly, that's how the game go. And ain't a difference in prison gates and ghetto walls. That's why we playing hardball. It's be perfections of my father's hustles, shrimp and mussels, and life's complicated puzzles. Grew up under the older guards, stare and see a law. Came from the same thug parks and drug parks as Tony Stark. I understand that the industry be underhanded, underground and underlined. Thank God, word it took so long for me to get signed. Climbed out a hell of a bind. That's why I still return around the way. Throw the toast to your nose and ask what's mine. Forward my emotions of a supreme rap artist. Solomon Child's New York protege. I've now been discovered. Yesterday was all of my kin that got me smothered. Wu-Tang for life, my brothers got me covered. Millionaire, billionaire status. Beef with police like Marshall and Nunez. Dealing with uniqueness.
If you're not gonna take care of business, stop taking up space. If you're not gonna take care of business, stop taking up space. If you're not gonna take care of business, stop taking up space. If you're not gonna take care of business, stop taking up space. Hey, Lord. Hey, Lord. Hey, Lord. Hey, Lord. Hey, Lord. Hey, Lord.
All right. We back in this bitch. Another episode, Go Deep, episode 227. We are back in this bitch, and it's probably going to be a good one because a lot of shit is coming together, like I said earlier. So, when I say a lot of shit is coming together, I'm talking about a lot of shit is coming together. You know what I'm saying? So, lately, check this out. This is a conspiracy show. Now, I might be tripping. Y'all tell me if I'm tripping. I'm going to just say some shit. This might be like a little, I don't know. I'm going to just say some shit. Y'all tell me if I'm lying. So, if you've been following along Go Deep, you've been following along Go Deep with a lot of shit going on, you know, but usually if I stay to myself, not really interview people, we get focused on the shit. Now, not to say that interviews are bad, because I like interviewing people. I like talking to different people, especially if I see somebody fucking shining. I'm going to be like, yo, you should be on Go Deep. You know, I just want to hear your story. I like that. But when we stick to the script, we talk about some shit and all that shit coming together. Now, I'm going to say this. One time I did interview my dog, Koj. And I think Koj we was getting to it, dog. We was getting to it, but maybe at the time I didn't know enough, or maybe at the time I didn't know how to say it. And we were getting to it, but Koj was like, yo, what happened probably is bigger than WB, AT&T, Warner Brothers, all of that shit. And I was like, yeah? He was like, yeah, this shit might be huge. It probably is huge. Looking at it, it is huge. But at the time, maybe I didn't know the severity of what the fuck we were standing in between. I didn't know I just thought Koj was this cool dude. We were on the Snydercut movement. I'm going to interview him. I'm going to see what's up. Nah, Koj was dropping them jewels, dropping them little breadcrumbs along the way. All right, I see that. So, now let's talk about how could this be bigger than what we originally thought. And let's talk about, you know, the movement and everything. All that shit. Because I think it all matters. Especially, and it's been archived on Go Deep. So I'm going to just, you know, slow clap for myself, you know, pat myself on the back, you know. But yo, check this out. So, you know, we talk about the Epstein shit, the Maxwell shit, and we talk about how it's more than just, you know, raping like little girls. There's more than just pedophilia involved. There's more than just sex trafficking involved, because what they were doing, when you know, like Bill Gates was with them, you know that it was bigger than that. And when you know that, you know, Donald Trump knew them, you know it's big. And in our lifetime, Donald Trump was one of the biggest swing moments of our lifetime. Everyone listening, Donald Trump. So was Epstein. And a lot of people at the time didn't even know who Epstein was when he got arrested. But a lot of people didn't know that he got arrested before and got out. And maybe, you know, when they arrest you one time and they let you out, they just want you to go into the big sting operation and find more shit. Maybe. But that happened. Everybody know what happened. He got arrested again under Donald Trump. And somehow they either say he got murdered or he killed himself, he hung himself, or some people now are saying he's not even dead. They just removed him out of his fucking area. All right. So Epstein had a girl. It was like his girlfriend back in the 90s. And I think in the early 2000s, I don't know if it just didn't work, but they were always together. They was doing their thing. Jeffrey Epstein was funded by a guy named Lex Wexner. He owned Victoria's Secrets, among other things. He gave Jeffrey Epstein all of his houses. You know, how they lured in a lot of girls was they said they were going to be able to get them on the Victoria's Secret models. And that was one of their entries to grab a lot of girls. And it worked. Because Lex Western paid for the lights, camera, action. Everybody know when you first getting trapped up in anything, they put the lights, camera, action in your face so they can fucking distract you from everything else they're doing. All right, so we know pretty much Jeffrey Epstein. Now we talk about Maxwell. We know pretty much about her. Her father was a big media guy. He mysteriously died on his boat, which is named after her, called Lady Ghislaine. He had beef with Rupert Murdoch, who owns Fox, among other things. So he was a big dude. So they were known to they know how to basically switch whatever narrative. They're big media people. But then you see Bill Gates hanging out with them. And you're like, damn, why is Bill Gates hanging out with them? He's Microsoft computer guy. And he is, you know, all this vaccination shit that, happened to hurt the Donald Trump presidency big time with this COVID shit. It stopped the economy, it slowed the whole country down, and blah, blah, blah. So, now we just keep talking about Donald Trump. We know Donald Trump was running the country, and he knew the Maxwells, the Clintons. He knew everybody because he grew up in the billionaire class up in New York, where all of them come from. So he knew them boys, and he had a beef with, not too long ago, early 2000s, I think, he had a beef with Jeffrey Epstein about a property in Florida, in Mar-a-Lago. And I think that's where he's at right now, Donald Trump. And he outed in the paper, he was like, yo, Epstein likes little girls. No, Epstein likes his girls young. And that kind of was an inside secret, just like this Weinstein shit in Hollywood was kind of an inside secret. Everybody knew, and it became in the paper, and then some girls started coming out, admitting. So then that made Jeffrey Epstein lose the property, in Florida, and it got Donald Trump to get it. So that was a beef. But that beef is bigger than just politicians and people. You know, that beef is now it's a beef between the British royal family and Donald Trump. That should all make so much sense. Ooh, the redcoats are coming. The redcoats are coming. Because that's who Epstein worked for. That's who Wexner worked for. The British family. Now, if you know anything about the British family, ooh, this fucking spiderweb just keeps getting bigger. The British family was connected to Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell and Wexner through Prince Andrew. Prince Andrew was known for wanting little girls and from New York to, you know, everywhere he went pretty much. And he was connected with Jeffrey Epstein. And even after Jeffrey Epstein got caught the second time, I think, Prince Andrew came to visit him in New York for 2 weeks and said he just came over to end their relationship, but they hung out together for like 2 or 3 weeks. But we all know it's bullshit because they were all in it together. But we've been naming some huge names, some rich people. Wexner, Bill Gates, Prince Andrew. Like, who the fuck are these people? Donald Trump? Who are these people? So, Prince Andrew, we all know that family is, the royal family is, the British royal family is really the Windsors, which is really the Vindzors. You kind of say with the V. I can't say it like the European people say it. It's Vindzors, which are really German. God damn. This shit just keeps spreading like a motherfucker. So the Germans, who last tried to take over the world in World War II, which kind of sort of begins the Watchmen movie, doesn't it? You know? Last since they tried to take over the world was in World War II, and we've been talking about them because they've had this super mysterious technology that we can't, we found after World War II, and we took their scientists and this, that, or the other. So that family now is the British royal family also. When you really know what it is. So now their agent in America, Epstein, has a beef with an American president, Donald Trump. But they were already cool. They knew each other. I wouldn't say they're cool because that's disputed, but they knew each other for a long time because the British royal family probably owned America. Now, when you look at it, from back in the day, JFK got murdered in '64 after World War II, because he found that this secret group inside of America was still funneling money through wars and drugs and all this other shit. They were called the CIA, but they were kind of working with the MI6. God damn. This shit is blowing the fuck up. But you're like, damn, all right, Peela, we know all this shit. Get to it. How did this shit affect us? Okay. I'm gonna get to it, yo, boys. Don't hit me. Just chill. I'm gonna get to it. So, fucking, these guys were raping kids and shit, right? Trafficking kids. Mostly Asians, because Asia got a lot of people. Mind you, England has a big influence in Hong Kong. You know, mind you, Batman, The Dark Knight. Remember Lucius Fox broke off the deal with Homeboy in Hong Kong? Remember that? Remember when the dude from Hong Kong fucking was working with all the fucking mafia in New York, Gotham City pretty much? He was working with the Russians, He was working with the Italian mob. He was working with the Jews, the black mob. And he took all their money to Hong Kong. And he was pretty much, remember in the Dark Knight trilogy pretty much? What's the dude name? Henry Ducard, British banker, hiding out in China. Remember that whole story, guys? Remember Batman vs. Superman, sex trafficking of kids, Asian girls, with the corporation, LexCorp, father, probably connections, and then you look at it to Ozymandias, same pretty much story. The corporate guy who has strong ties to ancient history. All right, so Batman vs. Superman, they were sex trafficking kids. Zack Snyder got in trouble. They wanted to cut up his movies, blah, blah, blah. They, wanted to cut up Justice League. We know that story. Why was Zack Snyder doing the branding? We know the Nexium story. We know the Nexium people say they are reincarnated Nazis. Remember the royal family, Windsor House. Remember Prince Harry wore a Nazi suit to Halloween or some shit like that. Remember? So Nexium used to brand their girls in WB, the girl that worked in it. I can't remember her name, but she was working with Bronfman, some girl. The Seagram's gin heiress, a billionaire, stealing young girls, not stealing them, basically brainwashing them, putting them in a sex cult and branding them. Kinda, you saw something similar in BVS, which you heard Go Deep point out long time ago. Nexium said they were fucking, they do some weird brain shit like Scientology shit where they feel that they know their past lives and shit. And they're reincarnated Nazis. But then the Nazis was working on the same experiments as we seen in Justice League. Government experiments. The mother box was a government experiment against black people, pretty much against fucking Cyborg, So Nexium was working at WB. The royal family, Prince Andrew, had a friend named Jimmy Savile. Jimmy Savile worked in the BBC. The royal family had a friend named Jimmy Savile. Jimmy Savile worked in the BBC. The BBC covered up this dude's life that he was a pedophile and helped rape hundreds and hundreds of little kids and kill them, murder them. He worked in the BBC for years and years and years. Who came to take over the movement, or WB, in the movement was a worker of the BBC, Ann Chernoff, who wanted to send Ann Chernoff some fucking fruit baskets and shit, and who got, at the end of everybody's job getting this movie getting this movie out through this movement wise, who got catapulted to the head of the movement, who's now putting over, cons and shit. Tell me this shit don't add up. But not only that, let's bring fucking Bill Gates back in this bitch. What was Bill Gates doing? Are you raping kids, or are you worried about some fucking technology mind control shit? Or some fucking experiments on people? That's what you're doing. Bill Gates, So Bill Gates, maybe you were raping kids, but I think you were there on the island and on the Lolita Express because you were fucking working on some technology of how the human brain works. We know Scientology and Hollywood is all human brain based. We know fucking all of this occult shit is unlocking the human brain shit, all in Hollywood. But how do we put technology involved in that shit? Oh, do we have a bunch of test subjects on Twitter? Ooh, go deep. Do we have a bunch of test subjects online? Ooh, can we make them boys like RoboCop when he went to the target practice aim? When he went to the aim shit, can we make them boys hit the target? Dude, this online movement that we have built, you say you hate WB, but this online movement we have built is the #1 trending movement on the history of the planet. It hits numbers that nobody... Is it RoboCop? Is it Cyborg? Did we just go through a fucking beef between the British family and the American government? We say they own everything. JFK say they own, JFK's final speech said they're in everything. All right. Who could be in everything? The Red Capes. So they were probably always in everything, always meddling in us. We're supposed to run away from America. As Americans, we were supposed to get away from the British family. But did we ever get away from them? No. What if the fucking royal family, through their agents, set up a organization in America, and they just run everything, and they do everything, and they fucking own everything. And if they want to beef with a president, they know how to get a Time magazine article that said a big cabal got together and took that president out with Donald Trump or JFK. Did fucking Zack Snyder give big Donald Trump, not big Donald Trump, big JFK teasers in his movie? Yes, he did. Both of the funerals in BVS resembled JFK shit. There was JFK in the newsroom. What are we talking about? So the technology shit, so Lex Luthor was sex trafficking kids in Gotham and shit, but he wasn't raping them. He was probably doing some crazy shit with their brain. With some technology shit that they've probably been experimenting out of space, from outer space. Or from the dark side, some mother box shit that they don't know what they're doing, and they're just using human brains to teach it. Oh my God, could they be doing that on the internet? Could we be affecting machine learning from a system that's been built since World War II and the Nazis? Could it be that deep? Find out in a few minutes. You bitch.
Search through pictures of almost any society event of the 90s and 2000s and you'll probably see her, Ghislaine Maxwell. Sometimes she's dead center in frame, living it up, but occasionally you catch her on the dark periphery of a photo. And those are the perplexing portraits that emerge of Ghislaine Maxwell. On one hand, the graceful socialite, and on the other, according to her accusers, a woman who lurked at the edge of high society, scouting and procuring young women to give to Jeffrey Epstein. But maybe the most perplexing thing, despite the intense scrutiny of Epstein's crimes and her possible role in them, Ghislaine Maxwell has largely disappeared, and many of her alleged victims are still without justice. Here's the mystery of the woman next to Jeffrey Epstein. Ghislaine Maxwell has denied any allegations of wrongdoing brought against her. Ghislaine Maxwell's TED Talk is still up on the internet.
So I'd like to share with you today why I believe the ocean should be front page news, why we should be worrying about it.
As is her TED Talk speaker bio, you can actually see how she introduces herself to her audience. It's impressive. She's described as being a president of 2 organizations, a certified EMT, a pilot of submarines and helicopters, and yet there's allegedly this other side. It's unclear when and how and why the Epstein and Maxwell partnership began, but cameras were catching them together at Mar-a-Lago parties as early as 1992. At that point, she'd only been in America for about a year, having fled tragedy and scandal in England. Her father, Robert Maxwell, a media and publishing tycoon who owned the Daily Mirror, disappeared off his yacht, the Lady Ghislaine, in 1991. What happened to him is still a mystery. To add to the trauma, Robert was then accused of defrauding his employees' pension plan for some $600 million. The sudden loss of her father's support and her family's good name meant that the upper-crust Maxwell, who grew up in a 53-room mansion and attended Oxford, had to live a relatively modest lifestyle when she got back to New York. She even sold real estate for a while. But exactly what Epstein and Maxwell were is almost as unclear as when and how. It is clear that they dated for a few years, but according to The Guardian, things changed when Maxwell realized Epstein wasn't going to marry her. Of course, they still looked like a couple in public, but they spoke about their relationship differently. Epstein called Maxwell his best friend in an infamous 2003 interview. And although Epstein claimed she wasn't on his payroll, according to depositions, Maxwell took over running the staffing and finances of his many households. From there, the accusations are numerous. We start to see a pattern. Maxwell was allegedly in charge of recruitment. Accusers say she would trawl for young, often economically disadvantaged women and offer them a cushy job. It worked. Maxwell was elegant, generous, British upper class, so the young women allegedly trusted her when she brought them to Epstein. As early as 1993, maybe just 2 years into their relationship, a Miss Maxwell, using Jeffrey Epstein's number, was hiring yoga instructors for private lessons. This is the actual ad. It's since come out that the earliest alleged victim may have been in 1994. But if a girl grew uneasy about Epstein's advances, Maxwell became employee relations. She sometimes allegedly used Epstein's wealth to smooth things over. It's unbelievable, but according to sworn testimony, Maxwell would even pretend to be some maternal presence, once calling a group of young women she procured for Epstein her children.
Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell had a great way of normalizing the abuse that was going on. They kind of made it feel like we were in this really deranged family.
But as with everything in this story, even that was a facade. The alleged truth is uglier. If someone spurned his advances, or worse, dared to leave the Epstein slave ring, Ghislaine allegedly morphed into an enforcer. That included physical threats, according to alleged victim Maria Farmer.
She told me I needed to watch my back, that I know you like to go running on the West Side Highway, and that's not going to be a safe place for you anymore because there are a lot of ways to die on the West Side Highway.
And there are other accounts of just cruel punishment, like when a dazed and crying Swedish teenager turned up in Manhattan, alleging that Maxwell took her passport for refusing to have sex on Epstein's island. Other alleged victims corroborate this tactic. But it goes even further than retribution. Accusers graphically describe how Maxwell sometimes joined Epstein in sexual assaults.
Ghislaine started taking off her clothes. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what was going to happen if I said no. I didn't know what was going to happen if I screamed. I did what they said.
And there was little limit to the abuse. She allegedly trafficked women among her wider social circles too, allegedly including, notably, Prince Andrew. But maybe the worst thing that Ghislaine Maxwell is accused of is giving orders that other female lieutenants followed, that she created a playbook, that she helped industrialize sexual abuse of young women for Jeffrey Epstein. These girls, Maxwell allegedly told a friend in the 90s, are nothing. So when the initial crime spree ended with Jeffrey Epstein's 2008 guilty plea for soliciting prostitution, maybe it's no surprise that Ghislaine Maxwell appears to have just moved on, like it was nothing. This photo is dated just 3 months later. After Epstein goes to jail for those 13 months, she's never pictured with him again. Sources say she moved on. But it's obvious when you look at all those photos that she did maintain all those other connections that she and Epstein built. Connections to socialites, politicians, and the media. She even poked her head out of the crowd at Chelsea Clinton's wedding. The past allegations didn't seem to matter, even when some of the alleged victims subpoenaed Ghislaine in 2009 as she was leaving an event. But by 2012, you get the sense that both Epstein and Maxwell wanted to change their stories. He tried to rebrand himself as a philanthropist, and she founded the Terramar Project, an NGO that purported to work like a social media network for the ocean.
A British businesswoman now is hoping to change the status quo by turning the oceans into an online country.
Given its maritime mission, it's perhaps understandable that Terramar's founder didn't face scrutiny from CNN or even the United Nations. It's unclear whether Terramar ever received money from Epstein. The FBI is investigating that, according to reports, but it does have some weird links to him, like her old world was still there. A 19-year-old who traveled twice on Epstein's plane, dubbed the Lolita Express by locals, ended up on Terramar's founding board of directors. And Maxwell only killed her deeply in-debt NGO after Epstein was arrested for sex trafficking in 2019. For years, she had been elusive, moving between houses, but after the arrest, she was gone. It was a stunning trick for someone who now had a new level of notoriety. Newspapers speculated on her whereabouts. Was it at a friend's in Manchester by the Sea, as neighbors claimed? So the internet went nuts when a photo outed her as she calmly read a book at a Los Angeles In-N-Out Burger of all places. But the picture itself was almost certainly misleading. The date is wrong, and there are signs everywhere that Maxwell's lawyer took it. See, it's not just theater. Her disappearance matters to alleged victims. If she can't be found, she can't be served, which means new civil cases filed against her can't proceed without extra effort and favorable rulings. And that's just one issue facing her accuser's quest for justice. There's also the bizarre and broad plea agreement that Epstein negotiated in 2008, which would seem to cover Maxwell. Although she's not named in it, it curiously offers immunity to any potential co-conspirators. The government has argued that it's only bound by that agreement in the state of Florida, leaving Epstein's other domiciles, especially New York, as possible venues for criminal action. But that will almost certainly be contested by Maxwell's lawyers. The agreement says United States. And in any court battle, Maxwell herself may prove a vicious opponent. The genteel socialite side may disappear. To counter a defamation suit brought by Virginia Giuffre in 2016, Maxwell's legal team cited decades-old employment records and cheating on a high school boyfriend to paint her accuser as a liar. Plus, at least one legal expert says that proving Maxwell's knowledge of Epstein's activities may be harder than the allegations make it sound. It's her versus her accuser. Finally, there may be unexpected obstacles. Shortly before the release of this video, Maxwell's lawyers sought to delay a civil suit because of an ongoing criminal investigation into their client. But none of that, not her pedigree or her connections or even her disappearance, has silenced the multiple women who are now in active litigation against Maxwell.
So you said that Epstein had an arrogance about him.
Yes.
And so egotistical he wouldn't have took his life.
No.
Do you have any stories from your dealings with him that showed that side of him?
Yeah, he would like turn on people. Sometimes, like, you know, colleagues, he would turn on them over, like, he would say that somebody was looking at, you know, Ghislaine a weird way, or looking at, but he really controlled the narrative, is what I'm trying to say. Like, he would get rid of people and then move new people in to have constant control of what everyone was thinking. But he also kept us all like kind of separate. Ghislaine did too, so we couldn't talk too much. Like, Andy Stewart was the only person I had daily contact with. Like, those maids, I only got to contact like maybe twice, you know, because it was very much set up that way. I don't know if that's answering your question. I don't think it is.
Did Ghislaine and Epstein and the co-conspirators take drugs?
Okay, so this was the other weird thing. When I first went to work for him, I just wanted to make sure that there weren't any drugs, you know? I just asked, like, do you guys take drugs? And he said, no, no one here ever takes drugs, Maria. Of course not. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And so I never saw any drug use, never. I saw Ghislaine drinking like wine when she was getting her servants to do her nails every day. I never saw, I did see some really, I wanted to backtrack, in Florida, you were talking about the photos. These were all things done to intimidate. So you walk into this really posh house. You know, it's just unbelievable mansion in Palm Beach that, of course, was Wexner's that he gave to Jeffrey. Now, who gives all these houses away, right? Millions of dollars, this mansion. Beautiful. Decorated with peach carpeting this thick and like leopard print wallpaper. You know, everything's so tacky. But you go in and it's such a beautiful house, but then all of a sudden you're like, I'm walking down this hallway and there are all these nude pictures of children and Ghislaine, and who wants to see Ghislaine nude? I was just shaken. And now thinking about those little girls walking down there. And then you'd have like President Clinton and Donald Trump, you know, and they're at Mar-a-Lago hanging out. And this is another thing. People think this is political. It is not political. It's only political in that the world governments have been usurped. That's kind of political by these powerful people. And it's not a conspiracy when you've lived it, you know? But I was just going to say that apartment, I mean, that house, you walk by all these nudes and these politicians. And then you go down this hallway. She wanted me to see this room, and she had these leather straps like attached to the wall. And I said, what are those? And she goes, I put my feet in them and I hang upside down like a bat for 45 minutes. Keeps me young. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, what's that thing? And she goes, oh, that's a sex swing, dearie. She just thought that was hilarious, that I didn't know what that contraption was. So, and she had all these other sexual objects in that room. It was like her sex room. It was so creepy. And they had a massage table in there too. So yeah, that was not, and I thought, man, he is so weird getting his massages in here. This is the weirdest thing, you know? And then I would have to leave for a few hours. And the last time I was there, the third time I had to go there, it was awful. They gave me 2 macaw parrots that cursed nonstop. So these are the kind of people, like, they didn't even respect animals. And I had to go home with like a 300 square foot cage in my 500 square foot apartment. Yeah, it was a nightmare.
Do you think they were dabbling in the occult?
Yes, I do.
And what makes you say yes?
Okay, so based on some symbols I saw, like engraved in the stone, that later I saw these same symbols, and I was told that it was this character that's like a goat that looks like Satan. It represents Satan. That's what I was told. And it looks exactly like what I looked up online. I'm like, wow, that's weird. They had those around. And then, you know, those Peruvian relics, David Icke says they use those in like rituals. Yeah. And she had those everywhere. So that's different. And then I want to know where all the children are. That's my main reason for speaking out, because people get it wrong, all the main news networks, because, you know, they want to get it wrong, maybe to help the people, just to lie, whatever. I am not going to accept that. I saw between 3 and 5, sometimes 10 girls a day. Okay, I was there a year. So that's like hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds, right? Thousands. Virginia, when she would be participating in abuse with these men, and there would be like 30 women, then no one saw them again. And none of them have come forward. This is my point. Like, so few people have come forward. When this thing broke, I thought, okay, now thousands of women all over the world are going to come forward because they've been abused. And then Brad's like, well, maybe they're prostitutes or something. Okay, if they were prostitutes, they would want money, right? If they were drug addicts, they would need that money to buy more drugs. They are not coming forward because they are no longer living. And I want to know where they are. Yeah.
Were they targeting girls from a range of society, from the poor to the rich, or did they have a type in mind?
A type, a very poor person, yeah, like me. Or, you know, my sister who didn't have money for college, didn't have money for the subway, that kind of thing. And he would always pay me, he paid my credit card until, you know, the last day when I left Ohio, and it would be like just enough to not cover my rent, so that I would have to work all these other jobs for him, but then I wouldn't get paid for those either. And then they would steal my paintings. What a great dean of students. So the whole thing happened to me because I went to the wrong graduate school. Imagine that. That is why that woman needs to be removed. That is very dangerous to have someone like that on the board, president of the board of a school. Are you kidding me? No, I'm not letting this lie.
So there are many different theories as to why Epstein was murdered. What's yours?
Well, he knew way too much, and he had loose lips. Yeah.
Do
And
you
I think,
think
they used him enough. They were done with him. I'm pretty sure, based on my experience of this, the FBI is very much involved in this. So the FBI is like, we don't need him anymore. You know?
Do you think if he had a life sentence, he was facing a life sentence, and the prosecutor said, well, tell us more names of the people above you, he would have sung?
Yeah, absolutely. You better believe it. Oh, absolutely.
You mentioned that while you were on the run, Ghislaine Maxwell periodically tracked you down and called you.
Called me.
How often did that happen, and specifically, what did she say?
Okay, so it happened a handful of times, but it was over the years. So it was enough she's an emotional terrorist. And so she would call me and say, like, while I was still in New York, she called and said, hey, I know you like to go running on the West Side Highway. I changed my phone number. And then she'd call and say, hey, Maria, I know you like to go running on the West Side Highway. You better watch your back because you can die so many ways there. Okay, dearie, click. So these veiled threats occurred until very recently. Yeah, until about 5 years ago. Yeah.
And do you have a theory as to where she is now and why she's being protected?
Yeah, I do. I honestly, just my instincts. It has nothing to do with anything other than what she told me. When she showed me those photo albums, that showed me a lot about who was involved, and also how things might unfold, right? Because she said to me, the Rothschilds are the great protectors of my family. You better believe they're protecting her, in my opinion, because in England, in some big castle, like they put Claire away, they put them all away. They marry him up like Sarah Kellen, give her a NASCAR driver. Okay. She's a pedophile who fed children to Jeffrey Epstein for 10 years. Sarah Kellen, I hope you go to jail soon, okay? But anyway, sorry.
So you're saying there's a power hierarchy, and Epstein was up in the, say, middle section. Wexner was above.
He was a low on the totem pole guy.
Low.
I would think Elan was probably middle. Yeah.
Where would you put Wexner and Ghislaine and the Rothschilds then?
So I think that, for me, from my experience, Wexner's definitely one of the heads of the snake in the United States. My experience was that he's the head of the snake. That's what I told the FBI. I said, I know the head of the snake in this whole thing. And I said, it's international, but the guy in the United States, it's Les Wexner. And that's when they passed me the other. I'm like, do you have a file on him, But anyway, Les was, he's pretty high up. But those Rothschilds, I think they're in control of the whole thing, based on what Ghislaine told me. Not conspiracy theories. I'm so tired of that. It's not a conspiracy theory, folks, when you've experienced it. Yeah, it's really not. Yeah, I've lived it.
Did she only mention the Rothschilds that one time, or was there more times?
No, she mentioned them all the time. She used them as a way of intimidating. So she would say things to me like, they own everything. They have all the power in the world, Maria. All I have to do is call them, and they'll do my bidding. Whatever I want. They own everything, Maria. So I believed her. I was terrified. Like when she would make a death threat to me, she'd bring up the Rothschilds. Like, they own everything. We know where everybody is. It's a horrible, and I'm not a paranoid person, but this whole thing has made me very sick because it's so stressful to not be able to go outside,
So you went to the news agencies trusting that they would put your story out there.
Yeah, for a year.
Are there any stories that they censored that you've not told me today?
Oh yeah, I have a lot of stories that they didn't tell anything. They told like they told a story that made it look like Epstein is dead, so the problem's gone. And this is what Epstein did to these women. And he's the only problem. I mean, I want to slap Savannah Guthrie because she sat right there looking at Virginia, who's been traumatized, saying, why didn't anyone ever tell? Why is it that no one ever said anything? Nobody, no one ever. And David Boies was so mad about that we were trying to go on The View the next day. So here I drive with the producers all the way to New York, and I can see the Empire State Building. We're driving through New Jersey, and I get a call from CBS or from ABC, and the producer of 2020, Jim Hill, he's driving me in the city, and this is one of his colleagues, this girl. She's so rude. She's like abusive verbally. She goes, tell me what you're going to say on The View. David and I were going to go on The View to show solidarity, right? And I said, I didn't want to go on The View, but I wanted to go on with him, and that was what was offered. So I thought, well, maybe we can do this thing. And I said, well, I'm going to discuss Wexner. And she goes, hand the phone to Jim. you're not going on The View. They own it all. They own the narrative. They look at all those men. Now they're men, but they were young men when they were raped at that school. And Abigail Wexner is still the president of the board of that. We have got to get these women who hurt people off the schools. I mean, that's got to be a good start, you know?
So out of all the stories that you told the media then, are there any stories you'd like to say right now to the people that they've not heard?
Gosh, there's so many things to say.
What do you think are the most important ones that the people hear?
I think the FBI being a criminal organization is the most important point I can carry across, and I can prove it because they have done nothing. And they let all of those girls get hurt. And then Berman tried to cover and make a lie, and then Julie Brown's like, oh, I'm a hero, you're right, Berman, oh my goodness. No, she's not a hero. Brad Edwards is a hero. And all of us, including all the Florida victims, can call him at any time. And that man is a great person who will help us. But I think the narrative has to change a little bit about who the heroes are. And the main heroes are those victims, especially the girls who were children and are still fighting. I mean, they survived. That's kind of a miracle, right? I mean, but the main thing I want to say is that the children, there's so many thousands of children missing, and I would like to know where they are. I want the FBI to answer for that.
So the sweetheart deal arose when I think Obama and Hillary were in power. Mm-hmm. Trump is in power now. Mm-hmm. Has that changed anything for the victims in the court system?
It's gotten worse with Trump.
How has it got worse?
Because he hired the people who gave the sweetheart deal. He hired Dershowitz, and he communicates with this scumbag on a daily basis. The scumbag who's harming Virginia very badly right now, and he's very well aware of this, and he buddies with them. I mean, what kind of creep is he? He's also someone that I was a witness to being around several times around Epstein. So I was a personal witness. He hit on me. And Epstein said to him, no, she's not here for you. This was at night in the office at the Helmsley Palace. And I had just gone running up there again to have the money for the subway, needed to save it for food. So my legs were exposed because I was running twice. And he comes in, it's 9 o'clock at night, and he comes in those offices. What is this man doing at 9 o'clock at night in the offices? He comes in and he kind of looks at me and he goes, he's looking at my legs the whole time. And I made an ugly face, so he'd look away. And Epstein saw me. He comes out of his office, and he goes, oh, no, she's not here for you. And he escorts him into this other room at 9 o'clock at night. She's not here for you.
What year was that?
That was in 1995. I'm sorry, 1996. Yeah, 1996.
So when you see Dershowitz going on the TV all the time and saying, I only sleep with my wife, what are you thinking?
Please. My opinion of Dershowitz is that he is a pedophile. Okay, that's my opinion, and I'm allowed to have my opinion, and that's based on evidence that I have seen and his friends. If your friends are that low, you need to get new friends, buddy. If you're not a pedophile, why are you only hanging out with pedophiles? Explain that to me. And shame on Fox News for giving that man a voice and not giving us a single interview. Not one person has been contacted by that network. If that's not interesting, you know? So this is not a left and right thing. This is very much a government global thing. It really is. This child trafficking thing. I wanted to say one more thing you asked about. That was the fact you asked what I would want to say that I told the media. This is huge, and they all know this. When you go to Ohio, like when we were driving recently, crossing the Kentucky border into Ohio, what we saw was the Abigail Wexner Center for Women, abused women. Can you believe that? First thing. Yeah, Jim pointed out, he's like, look at that, Maria. That is so gross. Okay. Every stall from there forward, when you went to the restroom, talked about child trafficking, human trafficking. They have signs on the back of the restroom doors. Only in Ohio, if you go to the airport there, huge billboards. Don't talk to anybody. Only come with who, leave with whom you can, because you will be trafficked. What are the chances? I mean, this guy, we work for Wexner, click. He's in charge. Why isn't anything being done? It's very frustrating.
So Bill Barr was part of the cover-up of the Franklin scandal.
Yeah.
Is he helping you guys?
Oh, no, Bill Barr. His father got Epstein his first job, Bill Barr. Bill Barr is so deep state and disgusting. No, he's not helping us. And I'd like to say to him, we've got his number. We know what he's about. He's a scumbag, okay? No. He is not helping us. No one is helping us. In fact, Harvard knows that I have 2 kinds of cancer and that Virginia started a fund for me, and they just gave away millions that they took from Epstein to a charity that they set up. And what do you bet that charity goes all back to them? Because that's how they do this. I've looked at all the paperwork where Wexner and Epstein were like money laundering. It's unbelievable with these properties, but nobody cares because it's the head of the snake.
Hello, Sean Atwood here on the True Crime Channel. Finally, Maxwell made a court appearance in person, laying to rest the conspiracy theories that she was never actually in there. Unless you feel that her appearance was a hologram or some kind of shape-shifting doppelganger. The reason she ended up in court in person. What they're saying is that a previous hearing was hacked by P-anon, I'm going to say, not the correct word that triggers the algorithm. P-anon people had hacked the previous hearing, which the judge ceased briefly, and my belief is that Maxwell's legal team have put that reason forward because they wanted to humanize the process. If you go to the website Real Ghislaine, there's this big campaign right now to humanize Maxwell, to portray her as a victim. And obviously, if everything's done by camera, it's very clinical, all your hearings are done remotely, there's not that emotion of being in the courtroom, having your family members in the gallery supporting you. Once you bring that element in, it's perhaps trickier for a judge to give someone a massive life sentence whereby they will never see their family members again unless they're coming to visit them in prison. So I believe they're using the P-anon intervention hacking story as a means to humanize, to get Ghislaine in the court, have her family members there, and one of the family members was there this time. I think we're going to see more of that, and to try and get the whole process less clinical than just everything being done by cameras and she's boxed off for the rest of her life, and you know, family have never had the proper opportunity to get in front of the judge in person. So, why was she in court yesterday? She pled not guilty to 2 more counts of trafficking, and her sister Isabel also joined her. She's been described in the media today as frail, with greying hair after months behind bars. This was in the Manhattan courthouse on the new charges which were added to the indictment 3 weeks ago. The lawyer entered a not guilty plea, and a padlocked black sedan vehicle was what brought Maxwell from the Brooklyn prison to the courthouse. Quote, "Yes, Your Honor, and I have, Your Honor," was all Maxwell was allowed to say when she was answering the judge before waiving to have the charges publicly read. Court is theatre. Defendants very rarely get to say anything in the pre-trial process. In my case, ecstasy trafficking, it was a 26-month court battle. I would go in, watch the prosecutor portray me to be the Antichrist, watch my lawyer portray me to be a child protege, stock market whiz kid, and the truth was somewhere in the middle. But I never got to say a single thing, and it's so frustrating just to watch one side say one thing, the other side say the other thing, and you think, over time you just learn that it's absolute theatre, and whoever's got the most money usually wins because they can put on the best theatre show. That's why you often see people arrested for crimes, got no money. They get $5,000 for a public defender, known as a public pretender by the prisoners. The state spends millions prosecuting them, brings in expert witnesses, paying tens of thousands. They don't stand a chance even if they're innocent. Making a murder is one example. Ray Crone, the snaggletooth killer, is another example. My lawyer got him off death row. So, the theatre of the courtroom. So after 9 months in the Metropolitan Detention Centre, physical appearance definitely was dwindled. She used to have short black hair. It was grown out long, showing off grey at the roots, and she looked more frail than her last hearing in July. There was no sign of a hair loss. Her lawyers claimed she had experienced in prison, and no sign of her husband Scott Borgerson, who was anticipated to show up to support her. So they said she's losing her, but it looks like it's going grey. She was wearing a white mask and blue prison issue clothes, with her feet shackled, as she walked in and sat down between her lawyers and 2 US Marshals behind her. So usually you're chained here, chained at the ankles, and they have a chain running down the whole thing as well. In the UK, the expression for that is three-piece suit, and you can't walk very far or stride very far, so all you can do is penguin shuffle your way into the courtroom. That's standard for transporting prisoners. It's an escape risk. They've got them all on these chains, and sometimes they have them on chain gangs whereby they're chained to each other. So she appeared impassive. At the end of the hearing, she waved at a blonde, middle-aged person at the back of the court. She did not appear to see her sister Isabel, who was at the back in dark glasses and a beret disguising herself, who looked nervous and was pacing around. There were only a few dozen people allowed into courtroom 24B of the Manhattan Federal Court due to pandemic restrictions. They included David Boies and Sigrid Macaulay, lawyers representing Maxwell survivors. Her legal team, Jeff Pagliuska, Laura Menninger and David Marcus, arrived ahead of the arraignment. The judge said she is considering the motion to move the trial to the fall or winter. All along I've said this trial will never happen. It's definitely not going to happen in July, and it becomes a game of musical chairs whereby the trial dates get moved, and then the defendant capitulates into signing a plea bargain to avoid getting a life sentence. 9 times out of 10, this is how these cases play out. 90% plus plea bargain rates in Arizona, I think, where I was. So my trial date got moved multiple times. I almost had a sentencing hearing and family members flew from England and that got moved. These things are constantly getting pushed back. Because these new charges came down just before the trial, in all likelihood it's going to get pushed back next, before we see a plea bargain get struck. The opposite of that is the fact that this is the biggest story in true crime, and the prosecutors, like in big death penalty cases, they won't allow plea bargains. They want the publicity, they want to enhance their own careers. This is definitely a career enhancing case. They're going to get massive publicity. They know if they go to trial, it's going to make their careers for the rest of their lives. So you've got that incentive from the prosecutors to not accept the plea bargain as well. They are careerists, and that is a huge motivational factor not to be underlooked in the legal system. So Maxwell was confronted in court by an Epstein survivor, a blonde named Danielle Bensky, who was sitting in the public gallery. She arrived at the last minute to the hearing and craned her neck to see Maxwell. Outside she spoke. You can find this online, but it wasn't very good volume, the version I looked. She said, "To be honest, I was too afraid to come to the Epstein trial, So this is a new feeling for me to sit there and accept a lot of things. I do think it's hard to sit through the hearing, and it's painful, but it's good too, it's healing. She added, after not having a trial for Epstein, this will provide closure for the victims. David Boies, who represents the second accuser against Maxwell, ridiculed the media blitz, which has been making her out to be a victim of mistreatment by the federal authorities. He said, "I don't believe there is any credible basis in this whatsoever to assert Miss Maxwell is the victim. The media blitz the defendant is putting out, I don't believe it's fair to the real victims. I think it's highly undesirable." Maxwell's even suing book publishers now. I might do a story on that. Boies said his clients were feeling good and looking forward to the vindication of the trial. This is a time of great stress for them, but also a time of great hope. Yes. I know Virginia has tweeted this online and I've retweeted it. So please go over and support Virginia and Maria Farmer. I'll put their handles in the description box. So Maxwell's lawyer David Marcus said that her two brothers had tried to come to court from the UK but were unable to due to pandemic restrictions. He said, "Ghislaine is in a very, very difficult conditions. None of us would wish on our worst enemy. She's staying strong, she's getting ready for trial. She's looking forward to that trial and she's looking forward to fighting, and she will fight." He added that he went to see Maxwell last night in prison and 3 guards followed him into a small room. "I've never seen anything like how she's being treated. She shouldn't be treated like this." He declined to comment why Scott Borgson didn't show. Maxwell's right arm looked thin and knobbly as she sat down in court at a table next to one of her 5 lawyers. Sister Isabel tried to avoid being identified in court by whispering her name to a court officer so that the journalist could not overhear. Judge Alison Nathan asked Maxwell if she'd received the updated indictment. She said, "Yes, Your Honour." She asked if Maxwell had read it and she replied, "I have, Your Honour." She asked if she would like to waive the public reading of the indictment and she confirmed that she would. Her lawyer Bobby Sternheim told the judge she wanted to plead not guilty. Judge Nathan said that while she was still deciding if the case should be put back from its July start date to next January, quote, "Everyone should assume it is going ahead this summer for the time being." So her lawyers had said she was demanding to be arraigned on the new allegations in person because the dial-in phone line on a previous hearing was hijacked by P-anon conspiracy theorists. Wonder how that happened and what they were up to. Her lawyers failed 3 times to convince Judge Nathan to release Maxwell on bail due to her weight loss and poor prison conditions. These are standard if you're incarcerated, there's no case there. But they're going for a 4th bail hearing. Yeah, let's see what happens. She had requested a week's delay to April 23rd to formally plead to 2 additional charges at federal court. Document filed by her lawyer states that this was to enable her family members to adjust their schedules and make travel arrangements to attend the court proceedings. But the survivors pleaded with the court not to delay her trial because they are suffering from an enormous amount of stress. That's understandable. She said the 2 women who will give evidence against Maxwell will not be able to rest until the case is heard. One is feeling significant stress, while the other is feeling an enormous amount of stress and intends to give evidence in person despite her personal obligations at the time. They wrote, "The longer this case remains pending, the longer the victims suffer the anxiety of anticipating their trial testimony and the uncertainty of awaiting a resolution." And there was people with big banners outside the court. "Epstein is the worst kind of virus." Quote, "As a result, multiple victims oppose any adjournment of the trial date. In particular, minor victim 3 expressed feeling significant stress during the pendency of this case and a strong desire to have the case brought to a close through trial as soon as possible. Similarly, minor victim 2 also indicated that she has experienced an enormous amount of stress while this case has been pending, wishes to see the case brought to trial as scheduled, and has already planned to be available to testify at trial as scheduled this summer, despite her." So, in the Telegraph, sources close to Maxwell family said that her appearance in court today is about her wanting to face her accusers head on. What? As well as being free from her prison cell for a while. So that's some kind of, would usually be interpreted as some kind of bullying or intimidation tactic. If you're accused of these heinous crimes and your survivors are in court and you want to face them head on, that's definitely a bad judgment call to put that out there, and could be used as an aggravating circumstance. I've heard of people in court, survivors, family members and defendants have got up and given funny looks, scowled, pulled faces, menacing, threatening, and judges have gone super aggravation of their sentences. So yeah, facing survivors of these heinous crimes, bad tactic, absolutely. So a rewritten indictment lodged against the 59-year-old added these new charges, and according to the new indictment, this person was abused multiple times between 2001 and 2004 at the Palm Beach, Florida residence when she was only 14. Maxwell's lawyers claimed that she'd lost weight and her hair was falling out. She's a shell of her former self because she's been woken up every 15 minutes with a flashlight. Lawyers are claiming these conditions were more fit for Hannibal Lecter. But husband was anticipated to travel 250 miles, but he was a no-show. And her brother Ian has launched this Real Ghislaine campaign. He was unable to travel. So trial set for July 12th, but her lawyers are trying to get it moved to January. And Judge Nathan has said the perjury matters will be tried separately, but Maxwell wants a delay on the main allegations too. So due to the pandemic, most hearings in the Southern District of New York are taking place via Zoom or through a dial-in phone line, which was previously hijacked, leading to the lawyers saying the client is demanding to be arraigned on the new allegations in person. Maxwell's lawyer Bobby Sternheim called the hearing a debacle and said that Maxwell is demanding a bail hearing where witnesses can testify regarding the purported strength of the government's case. As they have repeatedly argued before, lawyers from Maxwell wrote that she is being punished in part because Jeffrey is out of reach. She is no monster, quote, but she is being treated like one because of Epstein's effect, they wrote. Lawyers urged the Second Circuit to, quote, test the actual strength of the government case by insisting on a more thorough bail hearing where they could prove that each story told by the four people who say they were victims has dramatically changed over the years. At first, none of the anonymous accusers ever even mentioned Maxwell, as they hired the same law firm, sought money and fame, joined the movement, and only after Epstein died did they start to point the finger at Maxwell. Far from corroboration, this is fabrication, they wrote. Prosecutors are declining to comment. So again, we've seen this over and over with Weinstein, all these super predators turn the survivors into money-hungry criminals, sex workers, drug addicts, make them out to be the villains, but the public's not going to buy into that kind of BS. We know what happened. So early in the month, the judge rejected her arguments to toss the charges that she recruited 3 girls from 94 to 97. The judge also claims that the non-prosecution agreement does not protect Maxwell. She disagreed that some or all the charges should be tossed out, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens next. Of course, Maxwell is denying all charges, and if you want to see the other side of the story, they've got this website, realghislaine.com, where you can read the biographical details, including her reading list, which includes Boris Johnson. The website has been developed and is maintained by brothers, sisters, family and friends of Maxwell. The people who have known the real Ghislaine all her life, not the fictional one-dimensional character created by the media. This Monday night is about a 3-hour podcast exorcism of African voodoo with John Wedger, Isabella, Pastor Patrick. I think you're going to enjoy it. First half is with Wedger and Isabella. Second half with Pastor Patrick and Isabella. And Pastor Patrick is on fire. He likes that word, fire. So, it'll be good to see some of you there at the premiere. Then I've got a bit of a snivels with the hay fever and allergies. So I am on the local honey, and a lot of people expressed concerns in the comments about my snivels. Don't sweat it. I'll shake this off in no time at all. Did get so low energy yesterday. Didn't want to do the live stream on Friday night, but should be all good for Atwood Unleashed on Wednesday, commencing at 6 p.m. We've got tons of guests being videoed right now. I think there's about 20 podcasts filmed that have not been yet published. So every Monday and Thursday night 6 p.m. and then for the live streams Wednesday 6 p.m, Friday night 8 p.m. with Ron Swanson. And we've also got Matthew Steeples finally in the studio. Great guy, it was lovely to meet Matthew. And he did a whole hour on Maxwell, but he did a bunch of other topics as well. White House Farm, watching that on Netflix right now. Savile, all kinds of interesting areas we delved into. So hope you're going to enjoy that one here soon as well. All right, take care out there. Thank you for watching. Cheers from London.
Hope you liked the video. If this video helps you, please subscribe and like the video to mean a lot to me. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Take care.